Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Good evening, friends. Welcome to this June 25, 2015, Thursday night edition of Nightcast. For our opening story, friends, we go over to Pakistan, where the death toll for Pakistan's heat wave have passed 1,000, local media say.
It's one of the deadliest heat waves on record for Pakistan. But finally, temperatures have dropped from the oppressive 45 degrees Celsius. Despite this, the health minister for the region says many people are still being admitted to hospital. According to medical officials, hospitals in Karachi have treated nearly 80,000 people for heat stroke and dehydration since Saturday.
The overwhelming numbers we have been able to cope, but with great difficulty. The army came in, Pak army came in for our help and to our rescue. They have put up a camp here and they are helping us distribute and disperse water.
But as doctors and nurses have been overwhelmed, so too have morgue workers and grave diggers, unable to deal with the flow of bodies. The death toll from the heat wave now more than 1,000. The prolonged and frequent power cuts in Karachi are being blamed for compounding the crisis. The government has also been criticised for not reacting fast enough. But with easing temperatures, it's hoped the situation will improve.
We expect
temperatures in the coming days to remain at 37 degrees Celsius. There is no possibility of rain in Karachi. Maybe some drizzle as systems have moved, and it has already rained in India's Gujarat region.
The heat wave hit during the fasting month of Ramadan, which means many haven't been drinking water during daylight hours. It's also being reported that some shops have refused to sell ice or water between dawn and dusk, citing religious laws, which means they can be fined. But locals have found other ways to keep cool. For now, the cloud and sea breeze is providing some much-needed respite. Katerina Moe, BBC News.
And friends, from Los Angeles, we have a couple of stories, or a couple of videos for you tonight on how a wildfire is raging in California.
Just bring you some pictures now from California, where around 300 people have been evacuated from their homes as a huge wildfire burns through brush-filled canyons. This is north of Los Angeles, near Santa Clarita. More than 200 county firefighters are on the scene.
Okay, and we're still rolling some aerial video footage in the background of that California wildfire. And I think, friends, we've got some other video footage. Okay, all right, well, that's the end of that. Well, there's a little bit more there. Okay, all right, no more commentary on that video, but we do have another one showing friends, how hundreds of people have been evacuated from their homes as that wildfire spreads north of Los Angeles. Strong winds spread the flames close to homes in Santa Clarita. Hundreds of county firefighters were on the scene.
A wildfire is raging in California, which is suffering from a bad drought at the moment. Scores of people have had to get out of their homes. The fire's been burning since Wednesday now. It's spread over some 4,000 hectares of forest in Big Bear Lake. That's a very popular hiking and camping area. High winds, dry conditions as well, making it very hard for firefighters to control it.
Okay, and friends, we're trying some new equipment tonight. Instead of running the media player from a desktop that the fan wants to rev up during the summer months when this second floor studio with the air conditioner off and the hot lights on gets very hot in this room. I can endure it, but my computer can't seem to handle it too well. So the fan starts revving up double, triple, quadruple speed and making all kind of horrendous noise. Many of you probably noticed that in some of the past few broadcasts. But tonight, you notice it a little quieter because I'm running the media player from a laptop. And we've got another story that relates to what we would show you on our seals. Okay, I see I got some key level adjustments to make, though. I'm watching because, look, we worked hours and hours and hours into the wee hours. We were late tonight with live stream. We're into the wee hours because of changing equipment and changing things, and now I see I got chroma key level, so I'm getting that flash again. All right, but that's just things we're watching for. We'll work on straightening out as we go. We're constantly improving this program. Even after 600 programs, we still have things to work on and improve. But we got our chart that I'll just bring up on the screen very quickly and make mention that these opening stories related to these commotions in the air and on the ground with the wildfires are related to this fourth seal. Now, some of you are going to say, wait a minute, Stephen, we've always heard the fourth seal is related to disease epidemics and pestilence. Well, yeah, that's the primary thing that Jesus Christ said. Of the three things he said would happen between the third and the fifth seal, and one of them very directly related to the fourth seal is loimus, which means that's the Greek word that means disease epidemics, pestilence, the plagues of Egypt. That's what that word means. But that's not the only thing Christ said would happen between the third and the fourth seal, so I label it on the fourth seal because he said also at that same time there would be seismus. There would be commotions in the air, gale force winds of all kinds, hurricanes, tornadoes, typhoons. There would be commotions on the ground, such as the Greek English lexicon gives the example of earthquakes for that, but that also, commotions on the ground also of a seismic nature also include tsunamis, volcanic eruption, your flooding, your wildfires, anything that can make a commotion of a seismic nature on the ground. And there's one more. Tonight's news, or in our opening stories for tonight's news. Indonesia's Mount Sinabung volcano has erupted again, blasting ash high into the air. The volcano, which was classified by authorities as dangerous in early June, blanketed a nearby town in ash. 12 villages have been evacuated, displacing over 10,000 people, according to the authorities. The volcano erupted in 2010 after lying dormant for 4 centuries and has become increasingly active. Now, does that not tell you we're in a signaling situation related to that fourth seal, of the seismic part of that seal? That fourth seal, by the way, is depicted in Revelation by a pale horse with a rider whose name is Death. And these are deadly things we're seeing in these seismic eruptions. I think we have no commentary on this one, but we do have this video, friends, showing you the big puff of ash, smoke and ash into the air. 12 villages evacuated, displacing over 10,000 people, according to authorities. And again, this volcano, which erupted in 2010, before 2010, it had laid dormant for 4 centuries and has become increasingly more and more active of late, as you can see in this video. All right, well, let's go to our next story that relates to what is happening or was supposed to have happened in Greece tonight. Actually, it was supposed to have happened last night, was supposed to have happened Monday night, but it keeps getting pushed more and more forward. Greece and its international creditors remain in deadlock over the debt crisis dispute, despite a series of top-level meetings. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras failed to reach a deal with Greece's lenders. Then a meeting of European finance ministers broke up without progress. The Athens government faces default if it fails to make a 1.6 billion euro, 1.1 billion pound IMF debt repayment by Tuesday next week. Gavin Hewitt has this report.
Greece is a country in waiting, watching deadlines come and go. Yet again today, they heard, there was deadlock. There is a strange calm here when a default and bankruptcy could be days away. Tonight, there were protesters on the streets insisting there should be no deal with the blackmailers from the EU and IMF. The Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras was leading the negotiations in Brussels. He insisted they had already offered to increase taxes, but their creditors wanted him to go further, so stalemate. Although Alexis Tsipras believes compromise is still possible, but differences clearly remain, as Jerome Dijsselbloem of the Eurogroup accepted.
We are on a number of issues, quite far apart, so it's going to be difficult.
The main concern raised by the IMF is that Athens is putting too much emphasis on raising taxes rather than spending cuts, so further weakening an already fragile economy. But if finally there is a deal, it'll have to win approval from the parliament in Athens. Prime Minister Tsipras has little room for manoeuvre. In the parliament, go into the MP's cafe, and the talk is of how many from the Prime Minister's own party might not back him. Any deal that the Prime Minister signs up to will be one that will win the support of the MPs, insists Nikos Voutsis, the Interior Minister. But I'm not optimistic, he said. The glass is half empty. And there are many, like lawyer Ianana Stefanaki, who fear what might happen if there is not agreement by next week and Greece defaults.
I mean, if Greece was to leave the EU, I would feel that I have no future in this country. If Greece leaves the euro, it would be very difficult for me, for my family, for my children, but, you know, we'll manage somehow.
The problem for Alexis Tsipras is that he came to power promising to end austerity. But those who have loaned Greece money insist Athens must make reforms in exchange for further bailout funding. So there will be more behind-the-scenes negotiations tomorrow, with an eye to meeting yet another deadline when Eurozone finance ministers gather on Saturday. If there is failure then, questions will be asked about what will happen with the financial markets and the banks on Monday morning. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News, Athens.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. And friends, Angela Merkel says a meeting of Eurozone finance ministers on Saturday will be decisive, she says, in reaching a deal over Greece. The German Chancellor made the comments during a news conference at an EU summit in Brussels.
We were in agreement that work has to continue with the three creditor institutions, the Eurogroup and Greece, and that the Eurogroup meeting on Saturday will be of decisive importance because time is of the essence. Every member of the European Council.
Chris, there is an interpreter there behind Mrs. Merkel.
Deshalb also die entscheidende Bedeutung.
And BBC, you guys usually do a fabulous, fantastic job. We sure appreciate the license on being able to play your videos daily for our viewing audience here, or listening audience if you're catching podcast. But on that one, wow, you had Mrs. Merkel speaking in German much higher than the English translator there. So anyway, the main point of that was, as I mentioned in the opening to you, friends, what Mrs. Merkel primarily was saying that in the meeting of Eurozone finance ministers on Saturday, day after tomorrow, she says it will be decisive in reaching a deal on Greece. And of course, interesting point, and this news story is something we've all been noticing as the weeks and months have been going on with this this Union of Europe thing. Germany is moving into a very leading and strong position economically and politically. Politically, because a lot of it's because of the economic strength that Germany has. And there's one other element Mr. Herbert Armstrong told us to be watching for in the EU to come together to be what it needs to be so that they'll be able to give their power to a beast and he do his thing. It would need three things, three elements, three unifying elements. One, monetarily, a single currency, a monetary union. That's one. Two, it would need a political union, and that's certainly being worked out, in the progress of being worked out. And the third thing would be a military union, and Germany is increasing its military ramp-up of equipment, and it makes ships that other countries buy, military ships. And the United States, the UK, they just winked and looked the other way and allowing Germany to build back up in that way since World War II. But let's see. Do I have more video? We've got another video on this Greece thing. Let's go to that.
There was a lot of discussion about the two documents, based on comparisons, differences and similarities. Interestingly, several colleagues disagreed and criticized not only our text but also the text of the institutions. And we decided as a Eurogroup that we shall continue our deliberations. The institutions are going to look again at the two documents, our document and their own. There will be discussions with the Greek government, and we're continuing until we find a solution.
Okay, Frizz, that was Greece's finance minister. Let me find his name because I need to see it spelled in front of me when I try to pronounce this. Well, I got the lead in from the next story here, but we can back it up. Just bear with me. Greece's finance minister, Yanis Varoufakis. All right, and he was saying, as you heard in this video clip, that each side presented documents with their proposals that each side was hopeful of a solution on, but it ain't happened yet. Now, in our next video clip from today's news, friends, it's still related to this. Eurozone finance ministers are meeting in a desperate bid to find a solution to the Greek debt. They didn't do it tonight, and as Angela Merkel said, there will be a decisive decision on Saturday. But now, the BBC, in this next video clip here, the BBC's Christian Fraser spoke to two Greeks, and this video very interesting. These two Greeks who said that life was at a standstill in their country. Now, if you want something to pray about tonight, consider if this were happening in your country, in the UK, here in the US, and it could. If our money went flip-flop, as many are predicting it will, and I'm talking about many, not religious or Bible people, but I'm talking about renowned economists are predicting our money to go flip-flop. When you watch what will happen to our country when that happens. But people in Greek, these two in this video are saying life was at a standstill in their country and that many people had withdrawn their money from the banks.
Effie and Magnus, does it feel like D-Day for you, Effie? Because it seems to be coming around an awful lot.
No, it's definitely not D-Day. It's been D-Day every day for the past 5 months.
We had lunch together the other day, and in the midst of our lunch, your phone started jumping off the table. Your friends were ringing because you work with us from time to time. They wanted to know if you knew anything that they didn't. They're really anxious about how these negotiations are going.
Extremely anxious. It's like life is on a standstill. Everything's frozen. Nobody's doing anything. Nobody's spending. Nobody's planning. Everybody's waiting for this D-Day, which never seems to come.
Is that the problem, Magnus? The uncertainty of it all?
Yeah, everything is uncertain. I mean, at some point, everybody will get exhausted and give up. I mean,
give up on the Eurozone?
Give up on the Eurozone, give up on politics.
Do you think you really feel like that? It is reflected in some of the papers today. We're up to our necks, up to our ears, one of the papers says. We can't take it anymore. Is that how it feels?
Not for me. I'm with the Eurozone. I still believe in the Eurozone, but I can see a lot of people around me, gradually, they're giving up.
Where's your money?
My money's in my pocket and hidden away in my apartment.
So you've taken it out of the bank?
Yeah. Everybody's taking their money out of the bank.
Okay.
They're accused in the bank with people withdrawing 1,000 euro, 2,000 euro.
What would it take for you to have confidence in the process?
What would it take? Another government?
Really? Another government?
Another opposition party? Actually, if all the parties resigned altogether and we had new politicians.
Well, you know, I'm sorry for laughing, friends, but there are some things that just come across in a humorous way. And everybody's not being as calm as these two sitting around having lunch. This next video clip from 3 days ago shows how dozens of riot police had been deployed to prevent clashes between anti-austerity and pro-Euro protesters who had gathered outside the Greek Parliament building in Athens.
Europe is in chaos, and the cause is migration. Italy and Greece say they're bursting at the seams. Their neighbours are slamming the borders shut. Hungary threatens to build a wall, and Germany says it's choking on asylum applications. This is supposed to be the European Union, but it looks a lot like every country for itself. Existing EU migration legislation is clearly inadequate. Hot on the heels of the economic crisis, no European leader wants this as their problem. Migration and how to significantly reduce it will dominate talks at this EU summit, and attitudes are hardening.
Today we have no consensus among member states on mandatory quotas for migrants, but at the same time, the voluntary scheme cannot be an excuse to do nothing.
Ovviamente per l'Italia e gli italiani.
Obviously, for Italy and for Italians, this is not just about a discussion in this building. Migration is a daily issue for us, and I'm confident of getting the Italian voice heard.
A world away from leaders' sharp suits and limousines, though actually just a couple of miles down the road, is this Brussels asylum centre. A reminder that migration and its complications reach every corner of this continent. This man is from Guinea. He told me he's got no papers and is running out of hope. All of his friends here, like him, he says, have spent years in Belgium trying and failing to claim asylum. We've heard some very powerful individual stories here today, but the fact is these people's requests for asylum have been refused. And like the majority of failed asylum seekers in Europe at the moment, they're refusing to leave, many of them choosing to sleep on the streets or in abandoned houses instead. EU leaders are anxious and under pressure. They want to find a way today to return paperless people, as they're known here, back to their home countries much, much faster. Even as EU leaders discuss new migrant measures, many fear they're playing a doomed game of catch-up. The destitute from all over the world are desperate to come to Europe. These migrants arrived on Italy's shores in their hundreds this morning. It's an issue that pits EU ideals of solidarity and human dignity against the economic and social concerns of its individual countries.
Well, friends, that was not the video clip I intended to come up, but it relates because at the same time the EU leaders are trying to deal with this thing on Greece, they're also trying to deal with what you heard about in this video about the migration problem they're having. But the one I was going to show you that I have somewhere amid our videos, and it probably come up in a little bit later in our program, and I'll just point that out when it does come up, is one that shows how there are more, from 3 days ago, this video clip I have from 3 days ago, Monday night, how more in Athens, more Greek flags were being waved than EU flags. So we'll see how that plays out as this Greek situation thing progresses. All right, and then you saw in this video, you saw with EU leaders over there meeting in a summit in Brussels, they have been discussing how to respond to the growing number of migrants trying to reach Europe, with the situation being that more than 100,000 migrants have crossed the Mediterranean in the first 6 months of 2015 alone. The president of the European Council, Donald Tusk, said containing illegal migration was the priority, but that countries should accept their fair share of genuine refugees. And then you heard Katja Adler anchoring the rest of the video report. Now, friends, we go to what's happening over in Ukraine. The Ukrainian authorities are increasing restrictions in and out of rebel-held territory in eastern Ukraine. In recent weeks, goods and people have been stuck on either side of the conflict's front line. And with the war appearing to have reached a stalemate, some politicians in Ukraine are calling for rebel territory to be completely shut off from the rest of the country. Tom Burridge went to meet people in the rebel-controlled part of the Luhansk region in eastern Ukraine who risk their lives to cross.
Well, Alexis Tsipras, the Greek Prime Minister, may frustrate the diplomats in Brussels, but here in Greece he remains quite popular. And one of the reasons he may still be popular, despite the fact he's not done an awful lot in the last 5 or 6 months, is because he's made Greeks feel proud about themselves again. I want to show you the pictures tonight in the square in front of the Parliament building, and you'll see the Greek flags out there, more Greek flags, in fact, than Euro flags. And tonight this has been a small microcosm of where Greece is at the moment. We've had both the right and the left coming together. There was a rather tense standoff between them, with the left being pushed off to the side of the square by riot police. And that does worry some Greek people. If Greece was to tip out of the Eurozone, they fear those divisions would deepen even further. So quite an interesting picture in the square.
Okay, thank you. And friends, more related to the EU, UK Prime Minister David Cameron will set out his EU renegotiation aims to all 28 European leaders for the first time at this summit going on now in Brussels. He'll do that later, a little later in the week or next week. The Prime Minister hopes it will pave the way for official negotiations to begin on the terms of the UK's EU membership. But the BBC has learned that he accepts it may not be possible to change EU treaties before the referendum on Britain's membership due by the end of 2017. James Landale reports.
So I'm standing on the very extreme of rebel-controlled territory in eastern Ukraine, just north of the rebel-controlled city of Lugansk. And this is one of just a handful of crossing points. You can see that it was a bridge, but it's been completely blown apart. And so there are no vehicles crossing here. We have just seen people, pedestrians, making the perilous journey across the front line to try and see family, to try and buy goods, or even to try and go to work.
All right, friends, I blew it. That's obviously not James Landale reporting on British Prime Minister David Cameron. It's one more video I have on the Ukraine situation. And I do try to pull out the clips, friends, that help us after we've seen this kind of thing, like what you're seeing here, the destitution of people in the Ukraine, so that even though it's not happening to you, if you can put your mind into their situation as if you were in their shoes, because that's what Christ wants. He wants us to not be selfish and just care about our own lives. He wants us to care about these people being afflicted and hurt in the ways you're seeing in this video. Let's let it finish, and then I believe we should have the one I was just mentioning with James Landale on British Prime Minister David Cameron. But let's see the rest of this one from Ukraine, and hopefully you can grab into their situation there and let this impact your prayers tonight.
Здравствуйте.
Жить очень тяжело, очень. Парень у меня после операции на легком, ему нельзя работать.
Вот живем на 1200, поэтому я сюда и хожу иногда.
Life's difficult. He can't work. We're living on 55. But this month they're not letting me through. Over there, a relative gives me a few potatoes or a bit of milk because they have a cow, or I buy something else. And that's how we're surviving. You can't call it poverty. It's destitution.
This bridge says so much about this conflict because away from the physical destruction, the shelling, which is almost relentless around the front line, there are lives that are being pulled apart. And as the restrictions for people crossing in and out of rebel territory over on that side increase, then life for people who are still living there gets tougher and tougher.
Friends, I know some of you could read the subtitles, but for those that are listening on a podcast, as a few people do, they won't be able to see those, so I tried to quickly pop in there and read those. Okay, now let me check what does our video screen look like? We've got a map up there. What's coming up? I'm going to have to just play this and see what this is, because somehow I've got these last few video clips out of order a little bit. Let's just take a look at this.
They used to call it shuttle diplomacy. For 4 long weeks, David Cameron's crisscrossed the continent, shaking hands, eating dinners, making the case for EU reform. All in preparation for the moment tonight when Britain's referendum finally makes it onto the formal agenda at an EU summit.
Well, today marks a significant milestone, really, in the process of saying that it's right for Britain to have this renegotiation and this referendum to address the concerns that the British people have about Europe and to make sure the British people have the final say about whether we stay in a reformed European Union or leave.
Even as late as this morning, the Prime Minister was still pressing the flesh with leaders he'd yet to see. But what EU leaders ask, what the entire EU establishment asks, is what does David Cameron really want? They know that he wants to cut benefits for EU migrants, opt out of ever closer union, have more protection from the Eurozone. But they don't know the detail. For months, the Prime Minister's argued these reforms would need a change to the EU's treaties before a referendum. But the BBC's learned he's now arguing for a legally binding commitment that EU laws will be changed sometime in the future. Are you willing to give David Cameron what he wants on reform?
What does he want?
He wants to curb migrants' benefits. He wants to have greater powers for national parliaments.
For national lawmakers.
Will you give David Cameron the reforms he wants? Today, Europe's biggest players were silent about Britain's future as they arrived, their minds perhaps on the migration crisis or the problems facing the Eurozone. But the man who'll oversee the reform negotiations was cautious about Mr. Cameron's demands.
The fundamental values of the European Union are not for sale, and so are non-negotiable.
Few leaders, though, appeared ready to pick a fight.
Today we are ready to listen to David Cameron's ideas and proposals, and let's take it from there.
Over a dinner that's still going on tonight, Europe's leaders are expected to talk about Mr. Cameron's plans for the first time and ask officials to begin technical discussions about the details. But any progress Mr. Cameron makes in Brussels may be overshadowed by these scenes of illegal migrants smuggling themselves into Britain. Pictures this week that some Tories fear will make it harder to convince voters the EU is working. So tonight in Brussels, the talking continues. Few wanted Britain's possible exit from the EU to be the subject of their discussions, but they can't avoid it now. James Landau, BBC News, Brussels.
Friends, if you can kind of see it in between the lines, the attitude of Europe, United Europe, is going to be, look, we need you for now, UK, but once we make progress, pull this together, become economically very unified, politically very unified, and once we have an army, once we're very militarily unified, those 3 things Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, the end-time apostle for these latter days, told us to be watching for with the way the EU needs to come together, to have the beast, to have them give their vote to one dictator, one emperor, to revive the old Holy Roman Empire. with its seventh and final head. They will care less about the UK. They'll care less about the US, which is losing the pride of its power every day in the news. And why? Why is the U.S. losing the pride of its power? Because of laws and attitudes, many of which this man you see on the screen has helped usher in. But you people in the United States, it's your fault. You've got a leader like this. How can you say that, Stephen? How can you even talk this way about our leader? Well, I'm talking about his actions, his doings. And I'm talking about the actions and doings of all of the people of the United States, as well as God tells us in the blessing and cursing chapters that I've brought up many times. Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28 tells us if we obey our Creator, then He's going to give us blessing after blessing that He enumerates in the first half of each of those two blessing and cursing chapters, Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28. He says, I'll bless you as individuals and collectively as a nation. I'll bless you with rain in due season. Even the little vegetable garden you have in your backyard and the fruit trees, I'll give you just the right amount of rain so that they don't mildew or they don't dry up and, and wither. And for the nation, likewise, for your big agriculture that feeds the rest of the world, I'll give you rain in due season, not flooding, not drought, just the right amount everywhere. That's the blessing part. That's one part of the blessing. He also says, as a nation, 5 of you will chase 100 of your enemy, 100 of you will put 10,000 to flight. But you don't obey, he says just the opposite. You'll start to lose this and that, and I'll punish you 7 times, and if you still don't turn around and repent and obey me, then I'll break the pride of your power. That's the biggie right there. But he also tells us things like, I'll make you the lender, not the borrower, if you're being blessed. Just the opposite if you're not obeying me. I'll make you the borrower, not the lender. That should tell us right there, oh, hey, we must not be obeying God too well in this country. We got all this huge debt that this president has really floundered. And he tells us, all right, what's that trying to tell me? A warning on this thing? Okay, I got, because of the way we're doing the laptop, I have to run off the battery power on it till I can get a quiet power supply. So I got 8 minutes to play the last video. Okay, we better get right to it. But I was just trying to explain how if we obey, we got blessings, we don't, we got curses, and the ultimate is Ezekiel 6:6. We really don't turn around, friends. We're going to a situation where God is going to let our enemies lay waste all of our city with nuclear missiles. And this president thinks everything's so la-di-da okay. He's got everybody, he's got power over everybody, and he's friendly with everybody, and no worries. Wait till our cities are laid waste. I mean, I'm not looking forward to that, but that's what we're in for because we're not obeying our Creator, especially with stupid stuff like you're going to see in this video. Now, I hesitated whether to show this to you or not, friends, because this is so against God's law and God's way that this man advocates and promotes. But it shows you an attitude about the man. He was heckled in this meeting with lays and lesbians and gays during their Pride Month. And he says, this is my White House. I think you should see this. I think you should be aware, too, of just how he promotes lesbianism and gayism and the kind of things and same-sex marriage, the kind of things that is going to put this country in trouble with our Creator, so that we're going to deserve the curses that are coming, including the laying waste of all of our cities, if we as individuals don't object to this kind of thing. And if we were to repent ourselves of that kind of attitude, God would put the right kind of leaders in above us. But He's created such a situation it's going to be hard for a leader to turn it around unless we as a country, a whole nation of people, are fasting and turning around. But no, He's led people to get into this mindset that this perversion, this wrong way of living is right. He tries to make good evil, and he tries to make evil as if it were good, but it's not. President Obama was heckled at a celebration of lesbians and gays and whatever the rest of that LGBT stands for, Pride Month held at the White House. He held this at the White House. He was quick to interrupt their shouting, saying, "You're in my house." I'm going to let you see this. Got just enough battery power on that laptop to show this. Let's go for it.
We've gathered to celebrate Pride Month, and I've told you that I'm so hopeful about what we can accomplish. I've told you that the civil rights of LGBT Americans is... Yeah, hold on a second. Okay, you know what? No. Hey. Yeah, listen, you're in my house. Come on. It's not, you know what? It's not respectful when you get invited to somebody.
Okay, friends, my battery power on the laptop is low. We're going to come on out. I just wanted you to see how he was heckled.
Good response from me by interrupting me like this.
How he handled it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
He started to get a few boos there, but he was able to turn it around, and some of the others started shouting, "Obama, Obama."
No, shame on you. You shouldn't be doing this.
Shame on you, Mr. President. You shouldn't be promoting lesbian and gayism and things that are contrary to God's law. Now, I don't mind coming out straightforward as to what we should be doing to be getting God's blessings. Instead, what he's promoting gets us plenty of cursings, and friends, we're going to see the bombs blast our cities because of this kind of perversion. But let's go on. I got time to show you this one last clip before this laptop crashes. Friends, well, I thought I did. It's gone. I was going to show you how... I'll show you that next week. I've got another one of those. We showed you a cat video last night. How the cat attacked the dog. I got another cool cat video. We'll try. I'll show that to you sometime next week. Thanks for joining us. That's it for tonight's Thursday night report, friends. We're off Friday and Saturday. Otherwise, I wish you a good rest of the week, and I hope you've got plenty. I've picked up on plenty of the things that you can pray about in between now and our next nightcast, asking for God's involvement, as we should do, from Luke 21:36, to watch these things that relate to the seals of Revelation and to be praying about them with our whole being. And that way you can get that promise God puts in the rest of verse 36 of Luke 21, to be accounted worthy to escape the next major event in prophecy, the fifth seal, the great tribulation, a time of a great martyrdom of God's saints. All right, with that little mention and a wish for a couple good days until we're back here with Nightcast Sunday night, friends, I'll say thanks for joining me. This is your host. Until next time, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.